All right. I am really excited for today's podcast. It's the first episode where it also happens to be my first conversation with the individual and our guest. So we're switching up a little bit, but I want to kind of show the power that LinkedIn content, podcast, putting yourself out there can have in terms of almost you feeling like you get to know someone before you actually talk to them. So I think it's going to be a fantastic conversation. I'm joined by Justin Bellante, co-founder and CEO of Titan Placement Group. He has started. He's just hit their year anniversary, and I could tell that he's one of the guys that just gets it in terms of business development, recruiting, what needs to happen, and how to have success. So I'm super excited to really have my first conversation with him. So Justin, thanks for being here
Whoa, wow, what an introduction. I
today.
hope I can live up to, at least a third of that introduction, man.
No,
Thank you for having me, Clark. I'm looking forward to it.
of course, man. No, of course. So I already know it's gonna just be an incredible episode and conversation because I started on this journey to meet like-minded people like
Mm.
yourself that saw in recruiting. I'm like, I think there's a better way to do this, and doing the work is number one, but then just having an intentional and thoughtful approach. And as you just staying consistent, like amazing things can happen. And then you put that out there, you just start to meet people and see people, and you can kind of just tell, like, that person gets it. Like, I got to talk to them at some point. So then you reached out to me. You're like, hey, like, let's have a conversation. I'm like, let's do it. So here we are, and we'll start. I think how we always start. Inspired by our mutual friend Benjamin Mena. How did you get into recruiting?
Yeah. Well, I have been recruiting now for about a decade, and it all started at a call center where I met my wife.
Yeah.
We worked together on the same team. She one day woke up and was like, I don't want to do this forever.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, go find something that you want to do. And, I support you 100%. She did that. She went and, learned how to be a dog groomer. I was really excited for her. Um, and I started to think, is this really what I want to do forever?
Yeah.
And I saw the boss man was driving around a brand new Honda Civic. And, at the time I was like, well, he's made it. So, um, maybe I do stick it out. And then I figured, it's behooved me to at least take a look and see what else is out there, right? So I saw an ad on Craigslist of all places for recruiter. Um, I've only ever heard of those positions in like an elite professional level, and usually, without a degree, you're kind of SOL. So I applied anyways. She invited me in for an interview. Went and did an interview and learned how to headhunt. Um, was pretty much the only tool we had. We had Google and we had a phone. LinkedIn is just becoming a thing. So we are kind of figuring that out as we went, and the rest is history.
I love it. So did she have you call candidates or potential businesses that day? Yeah.
So that day, I was calling potential businesses, hospitals in the state of Florida, for her to book interviews or for her to book meetings with C-suite, professionals to try and engage with them and retain or contingency recruiting services.
That's awesome. So how, I mean, that's bold just to dive right into it. I love it. How was that first call? Like, how'd you feel before those calls? Or were you just like, did not know any better, so you just did it? Like,
I think it is kind of like, ignorance is bliss, right?
yeah.
The less you know, the easier it is, kind of beginner's luck. They're just like, here's a list of numbers, here's a script. And, I fumbled my way through it for a little while. The
Uh,
first 3 to 5 calls, it absolutely sounded like I was reading off a piece of paper. Quickly realized that maybe you don't want to sound like you're reading off a piece of paper. So call 5 to 7, it started to get a little better.
yeah.
I'd say by call 19, 20, I'm just about as good as a recruiter who's been doing it for a year.
It's a day in recruiting can feel like it's a year, right? I tell my wife who
Mm,
just started sort like helping us out on the agency side. She's 6 weeks in. I'm like, it feels like 6 years, right? Like your brain gets put into a pretzel. There's all these different interactions and responses, and it's just like this worked this time and didn't work that time, and it's just like, how do you figure it all out, right? What is the script? I'm like, there isn't
mm,
quite a script. Like there's frameworks, and then there's trial and error. Like that's what it is. Um, so you did
Oh,
well.
that's awesome.
Yeah, you set what, 3 appointments? Was that, if I remember correctly?
I
Right?
did, yeah. I
Yeah.
set up 3 appointments in the first day, and she was really excited. I was really excited. Um, it was like a small salary, $10 an hour plus, per placement fee. I think it was $1,000 per placement at the time. I was like, I could do this, and I'm gonna be rich.
Yeah. Honda Civic. I mean, come on, man. You get a Lexus. Yeah.
Yeah, no. It was an opportunity too to really like feel like a true professional and
Yeah.
and feel like you're actually making a difference, right? You're not just in that hamster wheel, if you will.
Yeah. I'm with you. I mean, I started around the same time, June 2013. I think I mentioned a couple an episode before. I was paying for gas to get to my interview, and I was living out in LA in change, like pennies, dimes, because I was working a telecom job. Then I just got a bunch of commissions taken from me because I made the sale, but then Verizon and all that, like they screwed up the install, like the
Mm,
guarantee install date. So I'm like, what the heck, guys? Like, what are we doing here? And so, I lose my commission checks. I got a, $1,500 draw in Los Angeles, which, can buy me 4 sandwiches. Like I was
mm,
broke, and an Aerotech, I mean, it was like it saved me. And I saw it at the parking lot and people hitting contests. And I was like, whoa, like I've made it, my ill fitting suit and
mm.
everything else. And that's like, I don't know how I get there. I'm just going to keep showing up, and hopefully someone will help me figure it out. Sounds like you, like, it kind of saved my career, to be honest, getting in
Mm.
recruiting. I don't know, I was a little older than you at the time, but like it's when before you started, but I don't know how you feel, but like that's kind of how I feel about recruiting. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah. I come from the underserved population, right? We
Yeah.
grew up poor. We grew up drinking water for dinner occasionally,
Yeah.
and I can relate very much, man. We stopped at Goodwill the week before I started. I was like, these are real professionals, man. I can't show up, in my t-shirt with holes in it. I
Yeah.
was like, let's go to Goodwill, get some nice, nice slacks,
Yeah.
a nice button-up shirt. Looks like my great grandpa's,
Yeah.
and I think it's what got me out of poverty essentially.
Yeah.
um, and I'm grateful, honestly, that someone gave me a shot. That's what we try to do, here at Titan, is give people a shot.
I love that, and you got to evolve from the tuxedo T-shirt to right in a suit and tie. So, the the no degree piece is interesting. I've never felt, mostly because my own experience, and I was a barely C plus B minus student in high school and college. I was like, I know it doesn't matter. And I hired recruiters, even at Aerotech, that didn't have degrees, and they went on to become successful, and their salespeople still at the company. How has that kind of motivated you in your career and starting a business?
Well, it's kind of twofold. Number one, I always thought like that was the only way to be successful.
Yeah,
And it wasn't until I actually get into the world of recruiting and learn that these people with degrees, they're just people.
yeah,
Um, and then the second part was, I always felt like I had to like work 3 times harder, if that makes sense.
yeah,
Like I'm not great at spelling. Um, Sometimes I speak street, if that makes sense.
yeah,
So I have to really work hard to articulate the words that I say because it's not how I normally communicate.
yeah,
So I feel like I've had to outwork everybody in an effort to bridge that gap of education, if you will. Um, but I think that allowed me to gain a lot of experience and just kind of get those reps in. And I think that that's what I say to my team. It's like in this job, it's not about like doing the job better than anybody. It's about doing every little thing just a little better. I talk about saving seconds. I'm all about saving seconds because those seconds turn into minutes, minutes turn into hours, and then there's, a ton of free time that you don't have elsewhere. So I've had to work to get those seconds really hard, if that makes sense.
it makes a lot of sense. I love the way you kind of phrase it and make it simple, right, to remember, because it is so important, right? How quickly you can put together a submittal package or ask the right questions so you don't have to call the candidate back or the client back or qualify a good rec so you can actually explain it to your recruiter and they don't have a million questions back, right? And you're like, oh crap, like I didn't. I didn't get that information, and it's like the kind of the
Mm.
call of shame back to a client, which is the worst, or a candidate. So it's like it all kind of matters. So I love that. I love that phrase. Um,
I'm stealing that call of shame. That's awesome.
and that's
I
gonna
make
be
those
our
regularly.
headline tomorrow on our post, right?
Yeah,
The
there
call
you
of
go.
shame.
That's
Uh, one of the things I picked, just kind of hearing you on another podcast, you talked about the power of a mentor, and I love the example you gave. They were
Mm.
just like, okay, you're like, hey, I got a great candidate, and you didn't have any of the information, so like, all right, call him back, like do what you got to do, like go figure it out, like, which I think kind of goes into saving seconds, right? You have to like have that rite of passage. You can only get there through reps in recruiting and
Mm.
kind of get to where you want to be, which I love the mental challenge of that. But talk to me about when you were kind of getting started, having mentors in recruiting, kind of like who those were, kind of how they impacted you.
Yeah, I think about it all the time. What does Scott Love say? He says something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing, like recruiting is career development disguised as a career, or personal development disguised as a career,
Yeah.
right? And I think it rings true because this job will, if you're not ready for it and you don't have somebody that you can lean on, it'll chew you up and spit you out.
Yeah.
Um, Another podcast, I think it was Brian Fink, said if you've been doing this for 10 months now, you're an expert. Um, but I've always had somebody, luckily, who's always been there for me. Whether it was, when I first started, was Jason and Christy. Jason's the guy that I mentioned. I get really excited. You have a 3-minute call with somebody who's like, "Yeah, I'll talk to him." You're like, "I got one." You run up to his desk. You're like, "Hey, man, I finally got you somebody." She's a nurse. You're like, "All right, well, this is for a director of infection control. So, uh, what hospital is she working at as an infection control nurse?" We're like, "Well, no, no, she's a nurse, man." We're like, "Okay, well, call her back."
Yeah.
So having someone there to coach me throughout all of it and help me get those reps in and help me kind of get the experience quicker, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
I can learn from all of his mistakes. And that's one thing I try and do with my team too, is like we're trying to cram 10 years of experience into like, 6 months. Um, so it's imperative, I think, to have somebody there that you can lean on to be like, how can I handle this? Or here's something that I think I'm doing correctly, and they can right size you a little bit,
Yeah.
and say the things that maybe you don't want to hear, but maybe you need to hear in order to, personally and professionally grow.
I I love that. I love the nurse, and it's a director, yeah, infectious disease or whatever. I mean, I was recruiting skilled trades and general labor. It was the same
Mm.
thing. They say they can drive a forklift. Like, did they tell you what any other time that they have? Is it stand up? Is it cherry picker? Is it sit down? I'm like, what are those things? Like I had no idea. Like, I mean, he said he knows how to drive a forklift, right? And then you find out, like, yeah, people will say anything, and we got go to work, so they don't even interview with the client.
Mm.
It's on us to send the person, and they show up. They could hit something or crash equipment and all that. Like, it's very real. You're like, oh, that's how I got to qualify the candidate and see if they match the job order, because same thing with a nurse, like you place the wrong person, that can have some serious consequences. So you kind of
Yeah,
like
sure.
you get out of bumbling idiot mode pretty quick. And I say that with all love. I mean, I'm looking back at myself, which I don't know how I made it this far, but it was the mentor. It was my manager. Mo was just so good at kind of coaching me out of the bad habits that I think is easy
Mm.
to fall into in recruiting if you don't have someone to steer you in the right direction. And I think it's a shame because I've come across recruiters that way. When I talk to them, like, hey, there is a whole other approach that you could take. And I feel blessed to have the mentors I did. Sounds like you had the same, and it has such an impact. That's why I started the digital recruiter, because the things I've learned,
Mm.
I'm like, how cool would it be to like pass this knowledge on and expedite the learning curve, and create some pretty great recruiters out there, because it's nice when you get those tips and you get people that expedite your career and your path. Like, it is that personal development. Like, it's so rewarding. You almost kind of want to give back as much as you can. So I'm right there with you, man.
Heck yeah. No, and that's why I love trying to immerse myself in every bit of content you can, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's your podcast, everyone I've listened to so far, there's like there's a nugget. There's at least a few nuggets. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if you've been doing this for 10 years, 30 years, or 6 days,
Yeah.
right? I think it's important to hear what everyone else is doing because you'll start to hear like echoing the same messages. And you're
Yeah.
like, wow, that thing I've heard before that I've really never attempted to do. Now I've heard it 7 times from 7 different sources. There must be something there.
Yeah. Well, it's like that
And
consistency you said, right? Like this
mm,
podcast, if that can be that consistency for people where these different owners and people in recruiting are successful and there's themes, that I'm seeing over and over and I'm hearing over again, and if I don't know what that is or how to approach it or how do I stay consistent or how do I come up with a territory plan and how do I stick to it? How do I know whether to stick with it or trash it and come up with something new, right? Like there's all these kind of unknowns if you haven't gone through it before. And if you can hear those stories and kind of see it, like it kind of gives you the confidence, like, all right, I just got to stay with this. Because I think you mentioned all the
mm,
time, consistency is it, like in recruiting, right? It's an art, it's a science, but nothing trumps consistency in this game, in this business. How do you kind of coach that? Like, how do you have that? But how do you filter for that and coach that?
hmm. Well, I'm a huge proponent of managing time.
Yeah.
Um, so like we were just crunching some more numbers this morning. Like so we're only here from 8:30 to 5 Monday through Thursday, and from 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock on Friday. It's our admin day. We might be doing some restructuring, but we did the math today. If you take in lunch and you take into consideration all the meetings we have, there's like 22 hours of work time, which is a part-time job, right?
Yeah.
And how do we maximize that? And then everybody here works a full desk. So how are you going to work a full desk in 22 hours and generate what everyone sets their own goal, but what most folks would consider successful is 6 figures, right?
Yeah.
How do you generate 6 figures in 22 hours with the needing to do all of it? And I think it all comes down to managing your time effectively, trying to navigate between non-revenue generating activities and revenue generating activities.
Mhm.
um, we like to say like we're like trained hound dogs, right? Like any dog can smell, right? But like a trained hound dog knows exactly where to go in the forest to find whatever it is it's looking for.
Yeah.
And that to us is revenue generating activity. So we have like a list of things that like in the middle of your day, if you have any of these things that come up, you need to drop whatever you're doing and do that because that is going to move the needle forward. Like let me give you an example. A non-revenue generating activity would be developing a lead list for business development, or I forgot what they call it in recruiting, like a stack of candidates, basically, sourcing a pool of candidates. Um, Although they can move the needle forward, like in that moment, it's really like non-revenue generating activity. What I would call revenue generating activity on the other end would be a scheduled call with a client, a debrief after an interview, a prep for an interview, scheduling or coordinating an interview, closing a candidate an offer. Those are the things that help move the needle forward.
Yeah.
So I'd say prioritizing is really important too. So time management, revenue generating activity, and prioritizing.
I I love it. That's and the examples specifics I think are definitely helpful because there can be some confusion because my manager always said like don't source at 9 a.m. Source at
Mm,
6 p.m., 7 p.m., or whenever you're done, right, with calls for the day. I'm like, that was one of the best pieces of advice I got. I don't know if I
mm,
always stick to that, right? But I mean, because it's typically like a Sunday activity is when I try to kind of build the list for the week and everything. Maybe spend an hour kind of prep for the week. It is, and I know you have a whole journey with nutrition and everything else. It's almost like kind of the meal prepping, right? On Sunday, you kind of want to get ahead of the week and building out your list, who you're going to go after, the
mm.
calls, all that on a Sunday night to kind of have it for the week. So I don't know. There's some interesting parallels there. Uh, yeah.
No, you kind of hit the nail on the head, right? I think it's kind of like health and fitness, right?
Mm.
It's like um, everybody knows. everyone knows that they should eat healthy, exercise,
Yeah.
right? But it's like who are the ones that are meal prepping on Sundays,
Yeah.
right? Those are the ones that are actually going to, get fit and healthy.
Yeah.
You know, every my one of my newer mentors, friends, he's like, he said everybody's on a diet, but who's actually like
Following it.
eating salads, right?
Yeah.
Like those are the people that are going to do things.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just those little things and little decisions you make, or the ones you avoid, right, day to day. Like that's it. Kind of it all adds up. And so, kind of to that point, let's just dive into the topic that I really want to make sure we cover is business development. Because I think you're doing things that would terrify everyone, especially doing them the way you do them and every day. So talk to us. Like you started the agency a year ago, right? So congrats on that
Thank you.
anniversary. And I know you mentioned you guys got off the ground pretty quick, right? Even with a non compete in place, right? You got some clients pretty quick. Like, how'd you guys go about that?
Yeah. So we kind of took the burn the ships mentality, if you will.
Yeah.
Alexander the Great, they got to Persia, they burned all the ships. They said, "Well, how are we supposed to get back?" They said, "Well, we're going back on Persian ships."
Mhm.
So that was our mentality. We have a 6 month non compete. We couldn't work for 6 months. I think it definitely helped us in a lot of ways. Um, Fast forward to us starting, we still had a 6 month non solicit agreement.
Yeah.
So although we can work as recruiters, we can't solicit business from clients that we know pay fees. That kind of sucked.
Yeah.
So we were like, what do we do? Well, we can't recruit because we have no jobs to work on. We can't manage any accounts, and we can post on LinkedIn, but you know, it's funny you mentioned that too. Business development. There's a post from today, last year. We put this big social media post that said, "Titan Placer Group is now accepting clients." Like we thought that was gonna, they're just gonna
The
come. They're coming in.
rainfall. Yeah.
Like, hold on, I'm gonna hit posts, and the phones are just gonna
Yeah.
explode. Um, that's not how it worked. But no, back against the wall. Basically, we it was feast or famine. It was either basically, I mean, I just had my son. Um, it was either I figure this out, or you know, we're going to be living off credit cards again, pretty soon.
Yeah.
So that definitely helped, drive me, I'd say. Um, but we've taken a really like old school approach to business development, and the old fashioned, old school sales mentality, like with soft hands and a little bit of technology, will take you very, very far
Yeah.
in this world and in recruiting. Um, Not to say we don't do MPC pitching. We don't dabble in some technology. With email campaigns and different means of getting clients. We try to get you know immersed in all the different tools that are available. But the old fashioned, um, picking up the phone, engaging with professionals, trying to get like have a conversation, finding the pain point, getting a hold of the person who's dealing with the pain. They're the person that's going to influence the decision the most. And kind of like targeting those
Yeah.
types of people and kind of taking that approach, I feel like it's been really beneficial to us. Um, I wrote down a list of different things here that I thought would be helpful for you and for your viewers. So old fashioned sales was like the number one thing I think that has helped us successfully. Um, MPC pitching, super important. Qualifying our leads too. We're not just calling like
Yes.
everybody. Like we're in healthcare, so we're not just calling every healthcare organization in the country. Um, so I think niching down, I think, is important too, because it makes the job a little easier when you only have to do one specialty. Like I've had people reach out to me since the last podcast, and they're like, "Well, I'm about to start my own recruiting company. Like, what should I do?" They're like, "I want to recruit everything for everybody." I'm like, "Well, that's the first thing I would say is find a niche,
Yeah.
right? Qualify your leads." So, we're going to do healthcare, and then a lot of the times we try and go for medium-sized companies. So when they're too small, they don't have any money, or
Yeah.
they're cheap, right? And then even if they have money, they're cheap.
Yeah.
And then if they're so big, they have money, but they usually have their own team as well.
And
So we
red
try and
tape.
find the sweet
Yeah.
spot, right? The people that have money and they don't have their own team. Um, that's important for us, I think, when we're targeting.
Well, it's huge. I mean, the targeting, the approach, knowing the problem you solve, your value prop, right? Niching down. How are you going to communicate that to the market and stand out from the noise is
Mm.
huge. I mean, I'm sure it's got to make the cold call so much relatively easier, right? To kind of pick up the phone and get through that anxiety because there's like you've now created a real reason as to why you're reaching out
Mm.
versus the blind, kind of the blind aim, the blind targeting.
You'd never call just because.
Yeah.
We're calling with a reason, a purpose, or intent. The reason for my call is, the purpose for my call is, the intent behind my call is X. Um, that's just like old school sales, I think, 101,
Yeah.
right? You never say like, "Hey, my name is Justin." It's like a big no-no, right? Immediately within 3 seconds of that call, they know I have no idea who this person is. If you have to introduce yourself,
You lost
they
it.
don't know who you are.
Yeah.
Right. You're already done. They're already checked out. Everything you say after that is just Charlie Brown, want, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. It's almost like even just, and we've been coaching this up with some of our clients, just like they're calling people that have an open job, but they're
Mm,
almost like, what if I like, hey, I saw this open job, I'm curious to learn more about it. Then they think that they're a nurse, right? I'm like, then they get mad when they call you back and they realize you're a recruiter. I'm like, the job's been open longer than 30 days. They're not getting any applicants. Why don't you just say that? And you'd be like,
mm,
hey, I'm calling because I saw this job's been open. Like, we just placed a few people in your area, a few nurses in your area. Like, do you want to talk about this? Like, we might be able to help. And they're like, yeah, of course. Or let me connect you with HR so we can get agreement in place and get this thing going. And it's like this like eureka moment for them because
mm.
you're shifting it, like it's real value. You're thinking about them and like what's in it for them and like inferring a lot of those pain points, right? If you've done the initial targeting, is that kind of similar to kind of your approach and kind of how you're attacking it?
Yeah, I mean, and it sounds like rudimentary, and it sounds like like, wait, it's that easy? Like, no, man. Like, pick up the phone and say,
Yeah.
"Hey, I see you have a problem. This is sales. I have a solution to your problem." And then with recruiting, it's even better because you're not coming with a whole process and a system. Like a lot of the times, if you're doing it well, you're coming with the solution. I have the candidate that will solve all of your problems. Here you go.
Right.
Um, Such an easier way to prospect. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And I'm sure because you've been at this now almost a decade in the same industry, your confidence, I mean, you can navigate and be comfortable on your feet talking not just find a rec, fill a rec, right? But the actual business case, the impact that a certain role, like if you see that open or multiple open roles in a company, you probably know like the sign on bonus is maybe too big that they're offering, or there's a red flag here, or like all the domino effect red flags, right? From just being in your industry and just attacking those phones. Like, what's it making a cold call for you now versus say even like 9 years ago or 8 years ago when you didn't quite know that? Like, what's been the difference for you?
That's a good point. I learned a lot about healthcare from the candidates that we work with. So I think that's a good point. If you're new in the industry, just always ask, like, "Hey, I'm new at this. What do you do?
Yeah,
What do you do as a nurse?" And then you'll learn, I think, through that. So, like, yeah, nowadays I know that if, let's just say, a job that I'm working on, a clinical manager position for a Medicare home healthcare organization. Um, Before, I would just say, okay, so find someone who is a manager of and a nurse, right? That's how I would start. A manager and a
yeah,
nurse. Man, they have to be a nurse. They have to be a manager. That's what the job description says. And then now I know that what they really want and what everybody wants in recruiting, they want someone who's doing the exact same job right now somewhere else. So try and target. I start there, right? If I'm trying to give people exactly what they want,
yeah,
so I'll target local competition. Reach out to people that are doing the job now. But what I know now too is that if I'm working with the DON, or if I'm prospecting for that type of opening, I know that the DON is now having to pick up the shifts of that clinical manager that is not there. So because I've been doing this for so long, I know who's feeling the pain. The person who's got to, work an extra 2 days a week and not get to see their kids at night. that person's feeling some pain, I'll
Yeah.
tell you. And it's only a matter of time before they're looking to leave themselves. And I think hiring managers forget that too. They're like,
Yeah.
well, we got someone taking care of it. We're like, well, hold on, let's slow down a little bit. Taking care of it. So is that more than they're, because who's going to work? Who's going to do more work for the same amount of money? For how long is anyone going to do that?
Yeah.
Regardless of how loyal you are to the team, I don't think anyone in their good mind would do that. So long-winded way of saying, before I would have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just looking for someone who's a manager and a nurse, and now I know exactly they need to have Oasis experience. I know the pain points, probably the DON, so I can hit the DON. I say, hey, I know a lot of people are looking for clinical managers like you. Here's kind of sets us apart. I know that you need someone who needs Oasis experience, who can hit the ground running, requires no training or ramp up because you don't have time for that. You're already working 2 extra days a week, and they're like, "How do you know?"
Yeah,
And then, boom,
you're a psychic.
I'm in
Yeah,
there. That's
yeah,
it.
exactly, right. I mean, and that's what I say. Like a great recruiter, great salesperson recruiting, they're 5 steps ahead of the client and candidate at all times,
Mm,
right? Like
mm,
that's where you can. It's like a great QB, right? You can read the field, you can see the field, hit the receiver before they even break on their route. Like that's kind of what you are, right? And you're directing that. And it's such a value add to both sides. And I think that's like
mm,
the wall, the barrier recruiters have to kind of get over when they realize they are a value add and they've internalized that. And that's where having a niche and just owning it, because you can't learn everything that there is to know about everything, right? In this time,
mm,
there's not enough time, right? And people know that, but they believe that you could be a specialist in something, and that's where the money is. And then you internalize that confidence, and then that's where sales happens. Like that's where
mm.
people are like, yes. Eh,
That's a good point. People do. They see us, like, especially if you're new, and then we say, hey, this is how much our fees are. They immediately are like, what?
yeah.
Like, I have to call this person and say, you got to pay me $30,000 for a physician? Like, that's crazy. But the longer you've been in it, the more you understand, like, no, we are actually a huge value add. We're not a cost or an expense. Like, we're the difference between, like, this patient getting seen and not.
Yeah.
Like, it can be that important. So when you're calling a prospective client and you're like, hey, Mr. Hiring Manager, we just placed a dentist in your area. During our search, I've recruited Clark. Clark's cool. He's been in the dental industry for 11 years. He's not really, actively looking for a new opportunity. However, he told me that if I come across a client in the area that is a good top-notch organization, he'd be willing to have a conversation. If this is someone you want to talk to, give me a call. Like, that's going to set you apart night and day.
I hope people like 33 minutes in, you like capture that approach. And
Mm,
if you do that, and every single day, I think I've heard you, and I've talked about this, the 8 touch points, right, with each prospect at least, right, and just have your touches every day. If that's the approach every single day, I mean, you you can't help but run into success in this industry
mm.
if you come up with that approach, right? I mean, I think that's kind of defines your career in a sense, right? It's just like just really smart, be able to pick up on those patterns and the nuances, the knowledge of the industry with just old school hustle, like and work
Yeah.
ethic. Like that's the secret sauce. Like that's it. That's the art and the science all wrapped in one.
Yeah, if you put hard work, a passion and commitment and willingness to do whatever it takes, and then you actually care and are compassionate, if you can put those three things together, like there's no reason why you can't be successful in
Yeah.
this organization or this industry rather.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, let's talk. You got some great clients, right? You broke through. You did old school. You made cold calls. Like you were smart about it. You had lit, and then you get the sales call, right? Then you're talking to hiring managers and prospects and decision makers. How do you go about qualifying, like say, great clients, good clients, not so good potential, like
Hmm.
good and bad recs? Like, what's your approach there?
So when we first started, we did take a whatever we can get approach.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, we were just kind of like, just whatever you got to do to get the agreement signed, man, get it signed, and then we'll figure out if they're good once we send them a candidate.
yeah,
And that was our thought process for a long time. It's like, well, you really don't know, and there's a testament to that though. You really don't know how good a client is until you submit a high quality candidate. Because even if they tell you in your intake, like, hey, no, we from the day you submit it to offer, we're talking 2 weeks, and then 4 days has gone by and you haven't heard anything after you submitted a candidate, you're kind of like, well, but it all starts from qualifying them appropriately. We do an intake, so um, we don't really take everybody. Um, we have an opportunity to bring on more clients because we have more team members, but we try and make sure that they're doing the right things, and that there's ability for us to actually make a placement. Right, that's important. We have a checklist called Rank Your Clients that you do after you do an intake call or after you've been working with them, and we try to do it on a monthly basis, where we'll have one of our job order meetings. We'll go over each client and then rank them on a scale of 1 to 10. There's 10 metrics. Give you some examples. One of them is like reputation, and that could be reputation in the area. Is that, does everyone in the area knows who they are, and they don't want to work there? Well, that's a challenge, right? So you get a 0 for that one.
Yeah.
Expectation for the position. Are they severely underpaying for the amount of work that they're requiring for the position? Like, do they get the checkbox for that? Right. History of working with the client. If you've never worked with them before, they don't get a checkbox. Right. And we try and prioritize clients that are a C or better. So like a 7 to 10. Um, and then, when you're done with the 7 to 10s, you go to the sixes, and then you go to the fives, and then we try to really not to work on or prioritize anything below a 5.
Yeah.
So those are some of the ways that we do that.
How do you communicate to a 5 or a 4 or a 3 that they are a 5 or a 4 or a 3?
Yeah. One thing I think that's a new topic. It's been all the rage recently, but I think it just works in all aspects in life, is transparency.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of folks, when I first started, it was like old school sales, like you got to create the narrative kind of thing. And I think people have carried that on into like their livelihoods, where it's like, well, we gotta like angle it this way, or come at it this way, or how about that way? And it's like, well, why can't we just be honest and transparent?
Yeah.
Um, and it's taken me, very far. So I'll literally be like, hey, Mr. Hiring Manager, once a month, we sit down and we go over every single client that we're working with. And this month, we went over you. So based on our experience, we're working with you, and I would go down the list. I'd say, so number one is this history, reputation in the area. I'm sure they know. Come on,
Yeah.
they know. Like, that in your area, if I call 50 nurses, 40 of them are not going to say good things about you. The other 10 don't answer the phone. That's a problem. How are we going to overcome that, a hurdle? And that's where I take more of like a consultant approach than more of like an order taker. Um, I don't know if it was a podcast or what, but I heard this the other day. It was like an order taker. Like, if you go to a restaurant, you're like, I want steak. And they go, okay. Boop. And then they leave, and they come back, and they just throw a steak on a plate.
Yeah.
And like, you're like, I mean, like, yes, it's a steak, right? You sent me a candidate, but you didn't even ask me, like, how do I like my steak?
Yeah.
Or like, do I want ribeye or T-bone? Or like, do I want
Filet,
season on
some
there?
butter, yeah,
Do I
some
want
garlic butter.
right?
What are we
Like,
doing here? Yeah.
um, so we try and take that approach with our clients too. Like, hey, you told me what you wanted, based off the criteria you've given me. Here's why I'm having some struggles. So number one, your reputation um, is not great. What are we doing to impact and make a difference on that right now? And you can take all of that information on that call and then just reverse engineer it into your recruiting. And so now you have all of your answers to the objections that you have while you're recruiting on the position.
Yeah.
So like, if he says, our reputation is not that great, but here's all the initiatives we have. So when next time a candidate says, I've heard bad things about that company, or like, hey, I've heard that too. Here's some of the initiatives that they're handling, they're doing right now to tackle that reputation. And then boom, you can handle that objection. Um, and then go through 1 through 10 with and hopefully, if they're willing, you can take a 5 to a 7, right? Or a 5 to an 8, but you're not taking a 1 to a 7. That's impossible, right? You can't take a you could take a 9 and make it a 0 too pretty quick. But there's an ability to influence it slightly,
Yeah.
given the flexibility of your client.
I love that approach. A lot of people can learn a lot from just that approach. And especially you're not taking the one from a seven. The one's got to get themselves to a four or a five first. Right? They got to have the
Mm.
willingness to kind of change and be different and want to do something different to actually solve the problem. Right? Not everyone is going to get there, and being able to kind of like say no early and know that the only option for them to ever get it right is for them to come back to you. Very similar in coaching. I can't coach someone that doesn't want to be coached.
Mm.
And I gotta learn that from the recruiting days, right? You can't help someone with hiring that doesn't want the help or not doesn't want to go about it the right way, right? Or is all talk but doesn't back it up with actions. No, I think it's really helpful for people to kind of break that down, some of the nuance, because a lot of people I work with and coach and talk to get really confused with that of like how to set boundaries, how to be transparent, and just be consultative, as you said. It's like, how do we change the script, right? How do we change the story to this and to this approach in the market? And that is so powerful.
I always try to think about it. I use empathy a lot in my career.
Yeah.
I always think about like what would I if I saw a friend, like a real true, like I'm real. I like to think I'm a good friend, but if I see one of my friends struggling, like, am I a real friend if I don't, you know,
Yeah.
share the detail? If I know, if I see like we're in a friend group and everybody in the group's talking about whatever situation it is, but no one's talking about it with the person, like 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 this client, they know they have a bad reputation, but do they know that that's the reason why people aren't willing to come work there? They might not,
Yeah.
and it that's my duty, like, to share that with them, because like, especially I just feel indebted because it's healthcare. Like I want to see the nation's healthcare improve.
Yeah.
um, and the only way we do that is by, you know not being afraid to say what we want to say.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you've mentioned before, just start with having engaging conversations every single
Mm.
day, multiple times a day. Then you'll get more comfortable having the tough conversations, right? But that is the barrier, right? It's to just the willingness to just say it out loud, and it becomes easier and easier. I mean, I'm sure you have no problem now doing it. I mean, was it just reps that got you there? Was it like studying someone? Like, how'd you become comfortable with the uncomfortable?
Just kind of living in it,
Yeah,
the more uncomfortable, the more time I spend in that uncomfortability zone, the longer I can go. And I feel like it just kind of works that way. Like you're only capable. I wrote it down, like limited beliefs is along the same lines, right? Um, you're only capable of achieving what you believe that you're capable of, doing, if that makes sense. And it all comes down to just like how much are you willing to endure. What was that John Maxwell quote? The something along the lines of, someone came up to him and was like, "Hey, I want to be you one day." And he's like, "Okay, well, are you willing to do what I did in
yeah,
order to get here?" Um, so
yeah.
yeah, that's important, I think, for sure. Absolutely.
I love that. No, it's true. There's persistence. When you're down, how you treat people when you're down, if things aren't going well, and I think that kind of builds the character, right? Your attitude. If things, you might not be where you want to be, but that's okay. You got to own it. You got to own where you're at
Mm.
today. And that can be good times, right? Bad times. I've learned to really appreciate the good times in my life, because I've had a few not so good, many not good times. And it's just like, it's not, you can't take it for granted. And,
Mm.
it's, you can't have, I think I used to be someone that was very complacent. When I hit a peak and I get complacent. And I don't know about you. I know you've been with I think you got married a few years ago, but then had your first child last year, right? I got recently married and had a kid. Am I wrong there, or yeah,
Pretty close.
pretty
We got
close?
engaged, and then
Yeah,
married after the kid.
yeah,
But yeah.
yeah. And so, and kind of my point here is, how has starting a family, right, having your son,
Mm.
being married, being a business owner, starting the business at the same time, how has that impacted you or changed you?
It's definitely changed me,
Yeah,
for sure. A lot of positive ways.
yeah,
There's some challenges. I'd say too that have come. It's changed me in the sense of like now, you hear about people working for something greater than themselves, um, and that could be whatever that means to you. But for me, it just meant like I have to be the example for my family, for my son. Um, I've always wanted to have kids, and always wanted to be a good dad, right? And that's subjective, but to me, it just means like being there when he needs me, supporting him, and being a good example. So for me, like that I mean, like I'm not the same. I mean, like I've always been pretty decent at recruiting, but I don't have the same drive that I did 2 years ago. It's completely different. I was totally okay working for somebody else for the rest of my life, up until I knew that my son was coming.
Yeah,
And then I was like, well, why would I? Like, if I was going to be an example and show him that he's capable of doing anything that he can in this world, like I should at least try and do what I think I'm capable of doing in this world, which is starting a business. So that's the part. Challenges have just been like, uh, I miss them. I miss leaving every day and coming to work. I leave when they're asleep, so it's not as impacting or impactful. Um, but yeah, I mean, like I love the idea of working 20 hours a week and then spending the other 20 hours being the baseball coach
yeah,
one day. And that's the goal, right? Is hopefully work my tail off for the first few years here, so where I can kind of dial it back a little bit and spend a little bit more quality time. But yeah, long-winded way of saying, dude, it's changed my life forever.
yeah.
I wouldn't change anything. I absolutely love having him in my life, and I think it's made me a better man, a better person, a better recruiter, a better business partner, a better husband, um, better everything, in my opinion.
I love it. I love it. It's you know I'm right there with you, and I think it's important to talk about, especially fatherhood and business owners and the impact. There's a shift that I see going on in our. Uh, there's obviously a shift in society the last few years in this decade. We don't have to cover all those things, but there is like a spiritual shift going on where there is like that presence and fatherhood is really coming back, and I think our generation is for the fathers that I see really place a lot of importance. Like you see that you hold your baby, you hold your son, and it's just like, oh, now I get it. Like it's bigger than me. Like it clicks, and I've heard it and I've believed it, but until you feel it and you experience it, and this isn't to be like you don't know until you're a parent. It's not. I'm not talking about that attitude at all. I'm like it is just like a personal journey. You talk about self development, recruiting. It's like oh boy, like okay, like this is a different ball
Mm.
game, and it's been so amazing, and it's awesome to hear you talk about it because I feel it like, and I live it in my soul of just the impact. And he doesn't know. He's just there smiling at me,
Yeah,
taken care
right.
of. And like, I'm just like, dude, you don't know how awesome you are. Like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, and you gotta, but like, they are not gonna believe you. I don't know what triggers inside of us, but like, I can't be about the talk. Like, I have to be about the action and I have to
Mm.
do it because I know, especially having a son, he's only going to watch my example, not what I say, because that's how I was
Mm.
growing up. And it's just like there is like a different trigger that goes off in a drive. It's just cool to hear you talk about it because I resonate with it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
heck yeah, man. I'm a huge family man.
yeah,
Family's super important to me. And for me personally, like I'm willing to do whatever I can, and I'll work 90,000 hours a week, to keep a roof over his head and food in his belly.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's just good. It's good people in the business. It's not win at all costs, right? If you have that mission that's
Mm.
greater than you, and I think you're hiring people and building recruiters and salespeople to expedite their learning curve and to be better than you were at certain stages, and it's sort of the same thing with your son. I mean, that is worthwhile, like, and that's worthy, and that's it's a big part of all this and the digital recruiter and Titan placement search and all that. I think that's what's going to change the narrative in the recruiting, the agency recruiting game. It's just like the little ripples that we can cause with our team of 5, team of 10, 15
Mm.
people. Like that's the domino effect. So it's cool to just talk to you about it, get to know you on an episode, have our first conversation be like this, and that
Yeah,
just
heck
so
yeah, man.
people can just be like, oh, that is pretty, like it's pretty cool, right? If you're gonna just put yourself out there, like, you don't know who you can meet and be inspired by. right? And kind of the rising
Mm.
boats, rising tides lift all boats type of thing. So, I appreciate you sharing that. Um,
Heck yeah, man. No,
yeah,
and thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate it. I think you hit the nail on the head. Get yourself out there,
yeah.
meet some people. You'll meet some people, make a huge impact in your life. And Clark, I think it's been really cool to get to know you a little bit more. And I can already tell this won't be the last time we talk.
No,
That's for sure.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. If what do you want to leave the listeners with? It could be anything.
Well, shoot. January, we're moving offices.
Nice.
So keep an eye out on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Going to see some really cool stuff coming from old Titan Placement Group.
I love it. I love it. We're not going to end just yet. I got to ask a question. You're in person. You got people in office every day of the week. How is that compared to potentially training people virtually for you, or what's been the decision, thought process behind that?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a challenge to train virtually.
Yeah.
Show me one MMA fighter that learned how to fight over Zoom. It's hard. It's hard.
I'd have to do a bit digging. Yeah.
I'm a kinetic learner, man. I gotta be hands on. I gotta be like, show me, and I'll do it right now. So I think that's been really important. The video and the audio, we're dialing in. I've got someone right now putting together an elite training package. So hopefully that'll cover those bases. But I'm a huge proponent of kinetic learning. Like here's a hammer. Let's go build a house together.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I'm doing everything virtually right now, except for when training my wife up on some recruiting stuff, and it has been interesting to kind of bring that almost in person training back a little bit. I mean, I've just been, I would say, forced to do it virtually. I just kind of have just the nature of
Mm,
kind of the last 3 years. It can be effective, but I learned in person and being in the pit, as we called it.
that's
And
it.
there is just something about it. Like it just drives you. Like you can't not do the activity because you're going to get exposed real quick.
No kidding.
Yeah, right. And I think we're doing some interesting things virtually to create those bumpers and kind of have people reveal if they're actually doing the work or not.
Mm,
But there is something about just being in person, and I'm excited to do some events and we have our team together and all that stuff because I'm with you. Like
oh heck yeah.
there's no better ceiling in terms of learning than kind of just being in that pit and figuring it out. So
Mm.
I had to make sure we covered that topic because
Yeah, of
it's
course.
important. I know people are wondering, it's like it's in person, virtual, and you got to figure out what the best way is for you to start, just to kind of create that revenue, right? Have office
Mm.
space and everything else, but you can get the team together to do it. I think.
That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah, one way or another,
yeah,
heck or high water,
yeah,
whether it's virtual, in person, as long as you are putting the work in,
yeah.
that's what moves the needle.
I
That's
love
it.
it. I love it. Well, Justin, it's been a pleasure. We'll have your LinkedIn, your website on the episode page. I'm assuming those are the two best places to find you, right?
That's it.
I
Oh
love it.
yeah.
I love it. Well, hey, thank you so much, man, for being on here. I know this won't be the last time we talk, so appreciate you, man.
Sounds good,
We'll
man.
talk
My
soon.
pleasure.
Awesome. Well,
Thanks for having me.
you're welcome. That'll be it for this episode. This is awesome. Make sure to rate 5 stars, all that good stuff. Right, help the little podcast, achieve big things. And until next time, happy hunting, guys.